we'll give them an opportunity to speak for a few minutes. David?
Thank you, sir. How are you all tonight? I am thrilled to be here with you again. We had a great Christmas party. It was the last time I was here, so it's good to be back. You know, I want to start out with a headline from the Daily Beast. It said, America, there's nothing to fear from socialism. Of course, that was the Daily Beast, but that should send shivers down your spine. We've got, leading the Democratic Party right now, an avowed communist. That's just shocking to me. How did we get here? And where are we going to go? You know, I ask people all the time, I'm like, you all know the squad, right? AOC, Ilhan Omar. Which one of those would you choose as your representative? None of them? Do you know if you chose any one of those four, you would have a more conservative representative than Kendra Horn? All four of them have a higher conservative rating than Kendra Horn does. It's time for Kendra Horn to go. She does not represent the values of 5CD Oklahoma. So my name is David Greene. I am running for District 5 here. I grew up in West Virginia. My sister passed away before I was born. She was 4 years old of a brain tumor. My brother passed away when I was 6. He was killed by a drunk driver. So that kind of tragedy either tears a family apart or brings it together. Fortunately for me, it brought my mom and dad together, and I was raised to understand what a solid foundation is. And that foundation is Jesus Christ. That's what they taught me. That's what I believe. That's who I am, and that's where I'll legislate from. I am a conservative Christian, and those are the values that I will carry to the U.S. Capitol. We moved to a small town in West Virginia called Taze Valley, and we moved into an unfinished house. My dad worked at Union Carbide, and the union was coming in. They were going out on strike. My dad was management, so he had to go into the plant to keep the volatile chemicals stable while no production was going on. The union officials who had come into town had threatened the safety of his family if he moved in the plant. So he moved us to an unfinished house so that we would be safe while he was inside the plant. You know, growing up in West Virginia, I saw the good side of unions. I know what they did in the coal mines. I saw the bad side of the unions. I saw the thugs. And now I see the political side of unions. And that's all they are now. It's just a political arm of the Democratic Party. So I went to college at Marshall University. We Are Marshall, if you saw the movie. I went there 7 years after the crash. It was still fresh on everybody's mind there. And I got to stay in front of the camera. So I got two types of education there. One about fortitude, what it was to carry through even when things don't look good. And the other was an intellectual education. I was a physics major, a math major, and in the 5th year of college, I had ran out of money. I was one of those 5, 6, maybe 7-year type degree programs. So I left to go to the military, and I promised myself I would go back, which as a promise I never did keep. But one of the classes I did finish in physics was fluid dynamics. And fluid dynamics is what climate models are built on. So when we start to have discussions in Congress about climate models, I understand the science behind it. And that will be convenient, well, maybe an inconvenient truth for those that are trying to kill the oil and gas industry here in Oklahoma. That's not going to happen on my watch. After college, I went into the military. I was stationed at Homestead Air Force Base down in Miami, Florida. Great place for a 20-year-old to be stationed. We won the maintenance award, and I won Maintenance Professional of the Year. And I got a ride in an F4. And we flew and did barrel rolls and flips and rolls. And he would fly the IP would fly it, and then he'd hand me the stick and let me fly it. And we did this maneuver called the Cuban 8. And you go down and you come up, you flip the plane over, and you go down and you come back up, and you flip the plane over, and you're supposed to end up right where you started. So he did it right on the numbers, exactly where we started. That's where we ended up at. So he gave me the stick, and I pushed down and pulled it over, and looking for the horizon. There's the horizon. I roll it over, push it down, pull it back, look for that horizon again, roll it over. And he said, hey, that's not too bad for a first time. He said, but look at your altimeter. I lost about 7,000 feet of altitude. So I was just a little lower than where we had started. He said, but you'd probably survive that one. He said, but look at your ADI. That's your attitude indicator. And I was flying upside down. The ocean looks exactly like the sky. You can't tell the difference between the two. But I was hooked. I wanted to fly. So as they drew down the F-4s there at Homestead, I got to choose a new career, so I chose AWACS, and that brought me to Oklahoma. I fit in real easy here because the same good people that I met here are the same good people that I grew up around in West Virginia. You know, the people who cling to their guns and their Bible. You all know who you are. Yeah, you don't have to be shy about it. After the military, I took a typical career path and went into the movie business. And I started making films with a guy named Dinesh D'Souza. And I made a couple of movies with him, 2016 Obama's America and America Imagine a World Without Her. I saw the deep state. I saw it in action. I saw Dinesh get arrested. I got an IRS fine. I can't say any of that was because we were making movies about Barack Obama, but it sure lined up real well. I never had any problems with the IRS before. But that gave me my conservative roots so that I could understand what conservatism is. And that brings me to running for Congress. When Kendra Horn got elected, I was shocked, probably like most of you. And I said, this is not who Oklahoma is. This is not who America is. And it's time to stand up and fight. So as I decided to run, and you all got a large selection of candidates to choose from, one of the things I hope you'll look at when you're making your decision of who you'll cast your ballot for June 30th is their legislative agenda. I've made a big and bold legislative agenda that I think needs to go in place to further what President Trump has done. First, we need to drain the swamp. I'll offer 3 pieces of legislation to do that. 1, bring Congress home. The senators should have an office in the state capitol, representatives right here in the district, and telecommute to Washington, D.C. We should be closer to you than 100,000 lobbyists that are going to spend $1 billion to try to get us to write legislation favorable to them. We should be writing legislation that is favorable to you. The second thing is the Freedom Act. The Freedom Act will put a limit on the number of words allowed in the Federal Registry. The Mr. Nice Guy on Shark Tank, I can't think of his name right now, I saw an interview with him earlier, and he said that Donald Trump is going to get reelected, and here's why. He owns over 50 businesses. He looks at the cash flow of those businesses every month. He said he has never, ever seen cash flow like this, and he was in business in the 60s. He said this economy is so hot that there is nothing to parallel it in American history. And that is why Donald Trump is going to get reelected. He said, now a lot of people credit that to the tax breaks, and that's okay. He said, but what really has created this economy is President Trump rolling back regulations. He can do things in California now with his businesses that he could never do before. So we need to enshrine that in law, because the next Barack Obama can roll back everything Donald Trump has done. So we need to enshrine that in law. We'll put a limit on the Federal Registry, and then we'll put a limit on the number of federal employees. Because what's happening is they pass a law, and then they hire civil service employees to administer the law. And that's how this deep state blooms. And we need to put a stop to it. We need to put a limit on it. Because it's taken on a life of its own. We've seen this in the impeachment trial. It's taken on a life of its own, and we need to say enough's enough. We're America. We're individual citizens. We're not governed by a centralized, powerful government. So it's time to put a cap on that. The third thing is term limits. 12 years is long enough for any legislator. 6 years in the House, 6 years in the Senate, 12 years in either one is plenty. Let's put term limits on and let citizens run this country, not professional politicians. The next thing is our entitlements. Our entitlements are getting ready to fail big time. Social Security Trust Fund will be depleted in 2034. Medicare's trust fund will be depleted in 2026. That means the payments going out of from those programs will come out of our general fund. The Treasury, the U.S. Treasury, estimates the unfunded liability for those programs is $50 trillion. Now, I want to put that in perspective. If we go to all the banks in all the world and get all the hard cash there is, that's $32 trillion. Our unfunded liability is more money than there is in the world. So we've got to fix it. You cannot fix a Ponzi scheme. Ronald Reagan tried it with the Social Security Reform Act. It didn't work. All it does is it makes the impending collapse bigger. So we have to change how we're doing it. What we're doing right now is a divestment of our public treasure. Money comes in, we hand it back out. What we need is an investment of our public treasure, where we start from a child the day they're born so they can start investing their public treasure. And they build. And by the time they're 65 years old, they'll have over $1 million because they've invested it for 65 years, and it will be worth twice of what Social Security payment is. We do the same thing with another $50. That's all it takes is $50 a month. And they will have another $1,040,000 a year to pay for their geriatric health care, which our geriatric health care costs around $32,000 a year. It's the most expensive health care of our lifetime. The remaining amount that we would normally just spend, and about 30% of that is sucked off by bureaucracy, which would go back to us, the people, instead of bureaucrats, would cover a college education, invest from 0 to 18 years old, and you have $130,000 for a college education. No loans. No complicated paperwork. You got a debit card, you go and you pay your bills. Use the rest of the money that you would get for your adult, your juvenile, and adult health care. And it covers most of that. That alone would put over $30 billion a month of investment into the market. America would move from a debtor society to an investor society. The transformation would be phenomenal. Right now, I heard it on the radio today, consumer debt has passed $17 trillion. Couple that with the $23 trillion that the government has indebted us, and we're individually, or as a country, in debt over $40 trillion. Wow. We need to change from a divestment of our public treasure to an investment of our public treasure. To further the economy and reduce regulation, I'm a supporter of the fair tax. The fair tax, let me give you these statistics. I don't want to mess them up. The fair tax is a sales tax that replaces everything else. You step up to the counter, you pay 31% sales tax, There's no income tax, no death tax, no gasoline tax, no alcohol tax, no other federal tax at all. It's one tax, and you pay it at a retail sales. At the beginning of the month, you get what they call a prebate. And let's say the poverty level is $2,000 and the tax level is 30%, you would get $600 as your prebate. So if you spend up to poverty level, you pay zero tax. Okay? So you don't start paying any tax till you spend beyond poverty level. That makes it the most progressive tax and adequately funds the government. So here's the statistics. Low-income individuals will have 26.3% more buying power. It ends extremely regressive taxes like FICA. FICA is very hard on the working poor. Ending FICA will give the average family $8,500 more income annually. The Beacon Hill Institute estimated that within 5 years, real GDP would increase 10.7% over the current system. Domestic investment by 86.3%. Capital stock by 9.3%. Employment by 9.9%. And real wages by 10.2%. The fair tax would save $346 billion annually because it would eliminate the IRS. After America, Imagine a World Without Her, when I had my little interaction with the IRS, I'm all about eliminating the IRS. So the fair tax would stimulate the economy. He just gave me a little 3-minute signal there, so I'm going to close this with what I think is the greatest threat against America today. It's been a busy week here in Oklahoma. We had Abolition Now at the state capitol Tuesday. That was to support State Bill SB 13 and end abortion in Oklahoma. There were thousands of people there. Abortion is the #1 threat to the American people today, I believe. 60 million. The population of Italy is gone. An entire generation is gone at the hands of abortionists. And we must put an end to it. We must put an end to it. I will sponsor the Zygote Embryo Fetus Rights Act, the Zephyr Act, that will extend basic human rights to the preborn. Their life is just as important as anybody else's, and we need to protect it. I'm a conservative Christian. I'm here for you. I'll be glad to take any of your questions afterwards. We've got a little table over here. We're sponsoring a rally, Let Them Live, in April. We got some t-shirts we're selling to help sponsor that rally. If you're interested in, we're going to bring Star Parker in, if you know who she is. She's a rock star in the conservative movement. So if you're interested, stop by, talk to us, get you a t-shirt. You know, been there, done that, got the t-shirt. So thank you very much. Thank you for having me. God bless.